Talking human conversations. Hello, good day. This is Chelsea, and you're back on Human Conversations, and we're here again with my beautiful co-host
Melanie.
And today we are going to talk about
Siblings.
Oh my gosh, this topic is such a, I'm so excited for it, and I'm also so, oh my goodness, about it. I think there's just so much that we can say about it, but today we want to have a conversation that's really just a conversation, sharing about our own personal experiences and, seeing where the conversation takes us. So without further ado, Melanie, would you like to start?
I will. So I will say that Chelsea and I grew up with just sisters. So what we're going to talk about is kind of from just our perspective. I think we both come from more like traditional families, like with regards to like gender roles and etc. So that did come into play, I think, in the way we were raised and like with traditional values, that kind of thing. So I will talk a little bit about me and my sisters, and I actually was thinking about talking a little bit about my mom and her sisters, because my mom comes from, she is one of 4 daughters to my grandparents. So I think I'll start with them because, generationally that makes more sense. So when I was thinking about them, they grew up in like the LA area. They were first generation Mexican American. And my grandfather was very strict. He did not mess around. He laid down the law, we'll just say that way, and didn't really let, he was very protective of his girls, we'll just say it that way. One of my aunts is a lesbian, and she, growing up, did strive, or like did kind of, was more into more masculine, societally defined masculine things. Like she definitely was more of a tomboy. She categorized herself as that. And so that kind of made her, like, for my grandfather, I feel like kind of like the little boy almost in the family for him. So he had like a figure kind of that he not favored, but like did different things with than his other daughters. So that was interesting to like hear about that and see how their relationship. My grandfather's close with all of his daughters, and all of my aunts are close with one another. There is a huge age gap between my youngest aunt and all of her siblings, and that actually is the same in my family. I have 2 younger sisters, and my youngest one she's 13 years younger than me. So there's a huge age gap there. How we relate to one another is different because of that age gap. And I noticed that difference also in my aunts and how they relate to my younger aunt. Especially my oldest aunt, like the role she took with my youngest aunt, and how me being the oldest, how the role I take with my younger sister. When they were born, we did a lot of like caretaking roles that maybe like a parent might do, like feeding and changing diapers and babysitting kind of thing, but more from like more of an older, like an adult kind of perspective, caregiver kind of perspective. So that the relationship I have with my younger sister is very different than the relationship I have with my middle sister, because she is only 4 years younger than me. So although that's still a pretty big age gap, I feel we definitely are in different life stages. Like my younger sister, she's barely going to be graduating high school this next year. Wow. So that's, I mean, good thing I'm graduating with my doctorate this year, because at least I'm not in school longer than she is in that sense. But yeah, she definitely, it feels weird because she's learning how to drive, and then like I've been like in the car with her trying to teach her sometimes, but it hasn't been going well. but that kind of role is not something that I never thought about it, because she's like a younger sister. I never thought I'd be those kinds of roles, but those roles are a little different than maybe other sisters may have, because of different the age differences.
Mm.
Yeah.
So is there a sibling that you feel closer to?
No, that's just because of the age difference. I see them differently. And so it's the way that I see my relationships with both of them, I don't feel closer to either one. I feel close to both of them, though. Like, I do feel close to both of them.
I thought I'd ask that just to make it juicy,
Yeah. I don't think they're going to listen to this, but maybe they will if they know we're talking about them.
Well, my sibling definitely listens to the podcast and really appreciates it. So, not to be like one up it. That's totally not what I was trying to do, but they really do like appreciate hearing the different mental health related things, especially going on today in today's world. Yeah, it's interesting how generationally we can pass certain patterns or dynamics down that if you take a deeper look at it or a closer look, you can see how it parallels, like you were mentioning with your mom's sisters and then with you. Right.
Yeah.
What do you think has been, go ahead.
I don't know. What was your question?
What do you think has been the hardest? Like when you think of sibling relationships, what's like the biggest challenge you've faced?
Well, getting along.
Getting along. Yeah, that's a universal theme right there.
Yeah, I think when I was younger, my relationships with my middle sister was different because at that point she was the youngest sister. And, I only had a younger sister basically for most of my childhood was just with one sister, right? My other sister didn't come around until I was 13. So the relationship I had with my sister at that time was very different than how it is now as we're adults. When I was little, there was much more like competition. Like I didn't like her touching my stuff. I mean, like that's normal though. Nobody likes their stuff touched. We would play a lot, but she was very sensitive as a child. That's just her personality. Like she would cry often, and by little things. Like actually, like she would just cry sometimes. Nobody would do anything. We would all, even my parents, my grandparents would be like, "Why are you crying?" So she outgrew that as an adult.
She's a deep feeler. She's just like
she's a deep feeler, yes, for sure, and open to expressing her emotions openly, which is a good thing. So, and now she's a lot more sassy than she was when she was little. So it's interesting, her personality, how it's changed a little bit. But I think we struggled with that too, because my personality is, I could be very insensitive a lot of the time, especially growing up. Now I'm hopefully a lot more sensitive to people, but when I was little, I was very insensitive and very self-focused, which, all children are, but some children sometimes are not, but I definitely was self-focused. And so we would fight a lot. And when my younger sister came along, I was already 13. My other sister was about 9. So when we had like a baby to take care of in the house. So that was very different. And going through my teenage years, I think I just was maturing a lot at obviously a different rate than my younger sister. So we weren't very close during that time. I was more close with my friends and my peer relationships at that point. But then when I got to college, things changed. When my sister got to college, things changed because she was getting more mature and like developing, her identity more. And I was pretty focused on school. And so that was hopefully motivating for her to also be focused on school. And so as young adults, like I feel like we had better understanding. We definitely did not fight we don't really fight like at all anymore.
Is your younger sister the one that you're going to be traveling with, or?
Yeah, so my middle sister actually just got into a master's program in Connecticut, so I will be traveling with her to help her in her move as she settles in for her master's program.
Hmm.
So
The
it's
middle,
exciting
the
news.
middle one, middle one.
Yes, yeah,
Oh,
because my little one's still she's
that's
gonna
right. You're
graduate
right.
next
Oh
year.
my gosh.
Yeah,
So,
and we don't know what's in store for her.
that's cool. So you all three sound like very different in a way, but it also sounds like you make it work now.
Oh yes, so we are also very different personalities. So I'm a Scorpio, and my middle sister is a Leo, and my
Oh,
littlest sister is a Taurus.
oh, wow. Those are strong signs. Oh my
Yeah, so for
gosh.
people who don't know, those are all pretty fixed and stubborn signs.
Oh my gosh. And to throw a Leo in the mix of all that, wow.
Yeah.
Leo's, because it's a fire sign. So that's, my sister, actually, this is a good segue. My sister
Hmm.
is a Leo sign. Um, my sister also recently came out to me with their pronouns they them, so it's been pretty exciting to kind of know my sister a little bit deeper into the way that they view their life and their identity. For me, so a little bit similar in the sense of when I was growing up, I was an only child for 8 years. And so
Mm.
pretty much every year I would wake up and go, so do I get a sibling today? Do I get a sibling today? I grew very, very quickly into, playing on my own and figuring out, how to do things on my own when I was younger because that's all I had. So the people I would socialize myself with were my parents, but they were also very hardworking and trying to support all of us. So I often just kind
So
of
did you
played.
have, oh, sorry, did you have like an imaginary friend for a while when you were little?
I kind of did, yes, but at the same time, it was like it wasn't the kind of imaginary friend that would you would go everywhere with. It was more of like I would put that energy into a stuffed animal. I always had some sort of stuffed animal with me when I was younger. Like my first one was a cat. I had this little kitten
Mm.
because, like I said, I really loved cats when I was younger. And then
Mhm.
whichever stuffed animal I was really close to, that would be my imaginary friend. So, and then a big thing too was because I was always alone and I didn't I never had some sort of child to bounce ideas off of, and like gain those social skills or awareness. Um, I had a lot of nightmares when I was a child. So every single night I was running into my parents' room and I would sleep at the foot of their bed, even if they kicked me. And, they have stinky feet. So I would like lay there. I'm just kidding. But so I would lay there. But, anyways, I had a bunch of dream catchers in my room too, because I thought maybe that would help with my dreams.
Mm.
But fast forward 8 years into my life, my mom asked me, so she picked me up from after school care one day and she said, and sitting in the middle seat in the back of her car, and she goes, so how would you feel if you had another sibling? And I was like, oh my gosh, I would love it. And so I was so excited. And I remember that moment when she asked me because it was just such a big moment, an important moment for me.
Mhm.
And then started the journey of being an older sister. And I think that this relationship in my life has been the most important because it's really taught me a lot about myself and it's given me permission to be myself, to find myself, and understanding my identity. I think when my sister came along, that has been a big theme for me. Is my sister's really created a lot of space for me to be able to to recognize who I am as separately from like what my parents kind of put onto me. So that journey has been really tough because I mean, as you can imagine, and from your own personal experience, and anyone out there that has a very long distance in age between their siblings, there are moments in your relationship where you just can't seem to make it work. Like you're just missing the mark. And a lot of that I realized later had to do with developmental things. We're in different stages in our life at different times. And so sometimes those just don't line up. And that's why I think parenting is so important because they can really foster opportunity for that relationship, or feed into the negative patterns or negative stuff that goes on. So um, when I was younger, my sister and I, we would, and my sister's okay with me using the word sister still, so that's why I still use it. They were okay with me, or excuse me, we would fight a lot when we were younger. And I remember one thing that was really hard for me, like you said, you're caretaking, you were kind of caretaking a little bit. My mom never let me do that. I always wanted to, as soon as my sister came, I always wanted to be helping out in some way, because it just, I don't know, that's just what I wanted to do. But my mom was very adamant about not doing that with me. And I understand, part of that. But at the same time, I felt like it took away some of that bonding time when we were younger, because I wanted to I would see my mom and my sister connect through like diaper changing moments, or just moments where they were getting, my sister was getting their outfits changed or whatever. And I always remember just really wanting to be a part of the experience. And sometimes I feel like I was a bit an outsider on that. But growing up, I was a much different person than I am now. So it was just interesting, because I think I took a lot of my frustration out on my sister when I was growing up. And I was a child, so I didn't really know. But that whole dynamic of like, your the affection or the attention being put kind of taken away from you. Does that make sense?
Well, like sharing it, you mean?
Yeah, sharing it. That was like a big deal for me, because I already had felt like, since my parents were working middle class people, I already felt like I never really got to see them as much in general. So then to have to share, like, let's say I was already getting 50%, and then to have to share that 50%, half of that,
Mm-hmm.
that was really a struggle for me. And I think even now, being older, there are times in our dynamics within our family where something new will come along. And so transition periods, they really show the dynamics between the relationships. And I still, sometimes that can come up for me, where I feel like I don't have like just my own like set thing. It's like always having to be shared, which is something I've had to learn. I think, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, not everyone is so self-centered. As a child, I definitely was like the person who was like always focused on others. But at the same time, I think it kind of went a little too much, to where I never got that focus on myself. So it just all kind of weaved into one another, and definitely made it hard. But there was a moment where my sister in high school and I were just completely infused with one another. Like I was just completely enthralled with my sister. And I guess in therapeutic terms, you'd call it enmeshed. And I didn't know at the time that that was going on, until we really started butting heads. And I know at that time my sister was going through a lot personally, and I was going through a lot personally. So we ended up actually going from like, each other's worlds, to a whole year of not talking, not speaking to one another. And mind you, we lived in the same home, and we lived, you know, literally walking, just our rooms are just like 2 steps away from each other. And then we also shared a bathroom. So it was a really tough time in my life. And it also was like one of the best moments in my life, because it helped me understand the relationship even deeper. So it helped me understand like what kind of sister I want to be, and the role that I want my sister to play in my life, and all those types of things, and the roles that maybe we were resuming before that. And so now I would say, because we ended up talking after that and reconciling our relationship, it took some time. Like I said, there's transitional periods. So it took some time to kind of get to where we're at now. But now we definitely are close again. And I mean, I'm very grateful for that, because I know family is something that's really important to me. But we really are kind of like it's weird. I want to say we're like two peas in a pod, but then we're also extremely different. Like my sister and I are very, 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 very different. Um, you know, they went to do an art degree in dance, and I'm, you know, I went the other route, but I still feel it's art, but it's, you know, like more of the like logical educational type thing. And um, when I was saying in the beginning, you know, my sister is really, she's been, or they've been given a lot of space to step into themselves, because, you know, at the time that they were born, everyone was kind of grown. So for me, I was growing with everyone in a sense, and then they kind of had, they didn't have everyone around all the time. So they were really free to kind of be more themselves and not have to engage in some of those like people pleasing tendencies that I kind of had to grow up around. And so because of that, it's been beautiful because I've been able to get like this opportunity to have that shared. And I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel like it's really allowed me to like remind myself how important authenticity is, and really like self-expression. And them being from Gen Z, it's just been a beautiful, in my eyes, it's been really beautiful. And I know my sister would probably say something similar, but in a different way, since I'm, you know, finishing up a doctorate degree. But it's been a beautiful journey. It's not been easy. It's definitely been probably the hardest, one of the hardest relationships in my life. But I feel like that's like because it's so important. And I wouldn't change anything about that, because I know that like no matter what, we still have each other. And um, yeah, I don't even know. That was a
And
lot.
your relationship is still growing, right? And still changing as you all continue to grow. I mean, both
Mhm.
are still young.
Yeah, and
So,
you know, for sure, they're like they're still finishing up their undergrad. And you know, in my eyes, I feel like when you just finish high school and you're still, you know, let's say you're not just, but even like 3 to 4 years after, it's such a tender spot in our life, like developmentally, in my eyes. It's so tender. So I'm just grateful that I get to have some sort of like witnessing moments of their growth and their journey and things like that. Like I view it more like that, you know. And there's definitely times where it's like, okay, I can feel the age gap, but I think we've kind of established a nice way of like getting around moments like that. Um, but it is a work in progress.
do you feel like being an older sister changed the way that you lived your life?
Definitely. Definitely. I think I want to say it was honestly probably for the better, because I don't know what would have happened had I not been given that permission, just by my sister being the person that they are. You know, I don't know who I would have had in my life family wise that would have given me that permission, that's like closer to me, like even in proximity, because a lot of my family lives uh, at least like 2 hours away or an hour away. So yeah, I think so. What about you?
Yeah, I want to say probably. I mean, I've always been an older sister since I can remember.
Yeah.
um, so I felt. I mean, my parents definitely will put that message like you're the older sister, so you have to be the example, and you have to. I don't know. There were these expectations placed on me. Oh, and you have to take
Mhm.
care of them. That was always. And my mom still says that today that I have to take
Mhm.
care of them, even though my
Yeah,
sister's obviously old enough to take care of herself.
yeah, that's interesting you say that, because I grew up with the narrative, like even though my mom never let me change my sister's like outfits or anything, which I don't know why that was so important to me, but there was that message of like, you know, you're the role model, you're there for your sister, you're supposed to be the one that your sister looks up to. Like that message was really put on to me, that I had to be this like perfect role model. So in that regard, I honestly think that still would have shined through. Even if my sister hadn't been born, I think that pressure would have still been like, you need to be, you're our only child, you know, like you need to be the best or whatever. You're all that we got or whatever it was. But um, I'm really like, I'm just honestly, I'm really grateful, because it was really lonely not having a sibling, and to only be socialized with people who aren't your age, older people, it makes it harder to connect when you are around other people, you know, your age. You kind of just feel like this like odd one out sometimes. And so when my sister came along, I felt like I was able to gain this whole new world of learning new social skills and how to interact, and, you know, just learning about patterns and dynamics in relationships that I don't think I would have gotten as much of before. Not to say that being an only child is like any sort of negative thing. I don't think it is, because then again, on the flip side, you get all the affection and attention, right? So it's just my experience of it was I really did want another sibling. So
Mhm. I do think there are some, I mean, there's like, again, with being an older sister, there's those maybe more expectations you make when you make a decision. You're maybe not only thinking about yourself anymore, you're thinking about like, how is this going to look? How will this impact,
right.
what kind of example is this that I'm setting?
Yeah, and I don't
But,
think that's something
oh,
so younger siblings like understand. Like they don't think about that as often as we do, obviously, because they don't really have to.
yeah. But I was gonna say there was some advantage. I felt like in my family, my mom, being like the older sibling, she always like included me more in decisions, probably, or like took my opinion or like my needs more into account when I would, and like checked on them more. Um, than maybe like my younger siblings. Like they would say like I would get my way a lot. um,
Mm.
but I don't know if that's just because I have a strong personality, or because I was the older sister, like so I got a little more, I
Yeah,
don't
see,
know.
that's interesting because I actually think I can. My mom was the youngest, and so when my sister came, anytime there was a problem, which was like every other day, my sister was telling on me, or you know, I told on her on them too. Um, Anytime though, I was the one that got in trouble, and then I realized my mom was the youngest and my sister was the youngest, so I was like, there's something going on there, because I feel like there's a lot of empathy given to my sister, but on my side, I don't see that empathy as much, you know? So it was kind of hard because it was almost like I didn't stand a chance a lot of times growing up, which I had already had those feelings way prior to my sister even being born. So it just really magnified those feelings. Um, I think I still work through some of those feelings of like, um, I don't know, just the way that I know when COVID started, there were some issues in my family where I was feeling like my sister could get away with everything, but if I said one thing, I would get in some sort of like verbal, you know, like reprimand or whatever, which just, you know, it does revert you back into like that child that you were, and you're like, am I getting in trouble right now? Like, what the heck?
Mhm.
Um, I was gonna ask you, what do you think is the like if you could wish that younger siblings could know anything about being the oldest, like what would that be? Like, what's one thing you feel like we're really misunderstood for that you wish they would know?
Mm, that okay, because my sisters would often say that I was mean,
Hmm.
but I didn't feel like I was mean necessarily. I felt like I was trying to look out for them and like
Hmm.
give them guidance or like, teach them what I learned or something along those lines. But maybe the way I was communicating it wasn't the best, but I feel like a lot of older siblings like try to give advice to like younger siblings, but the younger siblings feel like they're just being like told what to do or like
Yeah,
that. But it's really from a place of like wanting to be like
helpful.
protective or like helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, protective is one for sure. I think I can really relate to that. I think for me, it's along the same lines, but more so like it's not me so much wanting to put my stuff onto them, as opposed to me just really wanting them to learn from my mistakes, you know?
Hmm.
Because I know that's something that I've tried to share with my sister, like, you know, I had to learn these things on my own, which has also created the space for you, more opportunity not to have to deal with those things that I kind of had to fight for in our family, you know, when it comes to like dating, or I don't know, just the concept of dating, because that was really like forbidden in my family. Um, just a lot of things where I was the one that had to be the bearer of like all of the, okay, you did this first, you did this first. And so I kind of paved that way. And for me, I think it would be nice to have a little more acknowledgement with that. But nonetheless, like it wasn't so much to come off as like, do this and don't do that. It's more so, just to say, I want you to do whatever you want to do and what you need to do. And, your desires of what that looks like. And I also want you to keep in mind, like, what worked and what didn't work for me, and kind of like integrate those things together so that you don't make the same mistakes. And if you do, it's like, nonetheless, I love you no less than I already did the day before. But sometimes it can be nice just to kind of learn those things, or understand a certain experience that maybe you're headed in that direction, but maybe you can make a few different decisions or choices that can make it a better experience for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's very older sister of us to say things like this, like our mind going in this direction.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, I think that's a good sibling conversation. I think that, we got very personal, and I hope that people out there can create some space for themselves to check in with your relationships, your sibling relationships, and just reflect on where it's at and where it's been, and maybe where it's going, and see where maybe you can reach out. Maybe there's some relationships that you need to take a pause on, and that's okay. But sibling relationships can be a really important relationship in our life, because they teach us so much about other dynamics and our other systems. Even with friendships, there's like a huge friendship component to sibling relationships. So just because my sister's family doesn't mean I have to choose to be my sister's friend, right? But I do.
Mm-hmm.
So just something to think about as you're navigating these types of relationships.
Yeah, very well said.
Thank you.
So thank you everybody for listening in. Feel free to follow us on Instagram at Human Conversations to keep up to date with all of our newest information. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Yeah, take care.
Having human conversation.